The truth can be a very tricky thing simply because of how hard it is to achieve. But also, the truth can be molded in many different ways to suit one person rather than another. The Last Duel is a film, and rather a historical story that covers exactly just that. It does prove that the truth is very hard to learn, and even at the end of the day, we may never be owners of the real truth. We may never know what actually happened. So The Last Duel is a recent film that came out this year by director Ridley Scott, written by Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, and Nicole Holofcener. I hope I'm saying your last name correctly. And then it also stars Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Adam Driver, and the new, very popular, up-and-coming Jodie Comer. Very quickly, for anyone who does not know what this film is about, long story short, Matt Damon plays a knight by the name of Sir Jean de Carrouges, and Adam Driver accompanies him as a character named Jacques Legris, who is also a knight himself, and is very good friends with Sir Jean. Jodie Comer plays Marguerite de Carrouges, who is obviously eventually married to Matt Damon's character Sir Jean. Over the years, there is a detailed life for each character on who they are and what they get up to in their own personal adventures. Essentially, as I said, Marguerite is married to Sir Jean, but throughout this story, Jacques ends up taking advantage of her. And now I don't know the whole situation with the R word on YouTube, so I'm going to put it in terms of without consent. Jacques Legris, Adam Driver's character, takes advantage of Marguerite. And the story now becomes how Marguerite puts Jacques on trial for taking her without consent, and the truth must be figured out. If Jacques did indeed do that, if it was consensual, what the situation is. It gets really sticky and really messy. Now, starting off with the acting, which I always like to do, there is no doubt that this movie, isn't just a drama, even a little bit of a thriller, crime mystery, but it is a period piece. And I do understand that these movies are not for everyone. Because I should have said, if you don't know, it is a true story. And a quite fascinating one as well. I think a lot of the times when we think of medieval films, we do get caught up in this notion that we're going to see a lot of fighting, that there's going to be army on army. Not all the time is that going to be the case, and there were some instances of that in this film, but more than anything, this is about the stories of individual people, and that means the acting needs to be on par, and it needs to be very believable. And I gotta say, everyone did their job. Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Adam Driver, and now Jodie Comer, they're all great actors. But that doesn't always mean that you're going to be able to do good in certain roles. Like, not everyone can pull off a medieval type role. Luckily for them, they all did a great job, and I got invested into all of their characters. And Jodie Comer, I'll say for her, I think she may have actually stole the show. Of course, the thing about her character is that the movie is pretty much all about her. It's all about the physical assault that she claims to have received from Jacques Legris. And if the film is going to be entirely based around the issues of your character, you're going to want to put on a good performance. Over the past 2 to 3 years, it really looks like she's been blowing up in a lot of different movies or shows. And I would suggest, obviously, like I usually say when I do enjoy a movie, watch it for the acting, but watch it for her because she did a fantastic job. Now, the interesting thing I read about this film is that there is a portrait of Marguerite still to this day. Now, keep in mind, this whole event happens in the 1300s, almost 700 years ago. And this portrait of her has worn out over the years. And I believe there's only specific things that you can actually tell from her character portrait. The fact that she's got blonde hair, the fact that she had more of pale skin, even a little bit of the specific clothing she wore in the portrait would maybe point to what she would have worn in her daily life. So they don't really have a specific face to put to Marguerite, but all I'll say is Jodie Comer could be her, and I would be convinced. I was convinced, frankly. Now, Ridley Scott continues to deliver visually appealing films. At the end of the day, when you think about the work he has done in his entire filmmaking history, he unfortunately does not have all the time in the world left, but it is still nice to see that he's capable of making films that are visually appealing. You know, anywhere from Alien or Blade Runner, which is my personal favorite by him, this film had all the attributes you would expect from a 1300s crime thriller mystery film in medieval times. It was a darker gradient, like a grayish and like an icy kind of dark blue, and it fit the world really well because you knew from beginning to end this story wasn't going to be a story of, you know, it's rough right now, but things will get better. It really is a story of things are just going to get worse, but who is it specifically going to get worse for? And I think he captured the atmosphere. And speaking of film as well, the war scenes in the film were captured really, really well. Even though they're short, they were also sweet. War was a different breed 600-700 years ago compared to it is now. It can still be brutal now, but I can only imagine how war was back then, because you got to think, even the littlest things would ruin you. You get a cut on your leg in the wrong area and it's like, yeah, you're gonna die from disease and we can't save you, or we just take your entire leg off. Today with modern medicine, that has obviously changed. Ridley Scott was capable of capturing the feel of every single movement they make with a sword or a dagger or a shield, or even simply their body, is the feeling of survival. There were plenty of moments in the film, whether it be war scenes or a one-on-one fight like we see at the end of the film, where you can tell that every strike means life or death. And it was bloody. There were a lot of bloody parts. There's even a part where Matt Damon puts a sword through a guy's throat and it goes all the way down. Like, they did not shy away when it came to blood and gore. And I know that might not be for everyone, but I think it was the perfect choice to do that in this film, because that's how war was back in the day. Now, Eric Yeager, a historian who actually wrote the original book for The Last Duel, which the movie is based off of, he did state that the movie is about 70% accuracy, if not more, on what actually happened in this entire story. So you're expecting to have the best type of information possible in a 2.5 hour film. In true story films or even shows, sometimes there are things that you do have to tweak because it doesn't completely fit in a live action adaptation. It won't fully sit with audiences as correctly as it would have in real life. So there are certainly things that you do have to change from time to time. But more than not, from what I read into this film after seeing it, it is relatively accurate from beginning to end. And I think a lot of that credit has to go to the writers, but also Ben Affleck, because Ben Affleck continues to show, especially over the past 10 years, how good of a writer he can be. And the fact that he's capable of not only taking the information of the story of Marguerite and The Last Duel, but the lack of information, because we don't have everything, and he was capable of making a riveting film out of it. Great job. So the film is split into 3 parts. Part 1 is the truth presented by Sir Jean, which is Matt Damon's character. Part 2 is the truth presented by Jacques, which is Adam Driver's character. And part 3 is the truth according to Marguerite. So we get to see each individual side of what has truly happened. Sir Jean is of a military mind, a little bit arrogant, a little self-centered, thinks he can take the world on his own. And after time, he does meet Marguerite, who he in turn marries, and they end up creating a life together in the midst of trying times in France. Pierre Delacour, which is Ben Affleck's character, he's essentially a count in a big region of France, and he has loaned a lot of money and a lot of property to a lot of people in France, which he now needs in return. Fortunately, a lot of people don't have the money to pay, so it's got to be paid in other ways, or I think you can fill in the blanks of what would happen to you. As the story moves on, Marguerite's father had a huge piece of land that was supposed to be hers when she eventually got married. Unfortunately, to pay his debt to Pierre, he needed to give that land to him, which now means she is no longer heir to that land, and this is making Sir Jean very, very angry. As the movie goes along too, you start to realize that Jacques has a very close relationship with Pierre, and because of that, they become very good friends, and Jacques even gets a lot of perks and bonuses from being friends with Pierre and basically his right-hand man. So that now, of course, splits the friendship between Jean and Jacques. It is a very known thing that a lot of people in France are not a big fan of Sir Jean, and that in turn just makes Pierre want to give Jean an even harder time by taking away land or stripping titles or even talking bad about him in the public eye. So this is obviously causing an even greater shift between Jean and Jacques. At one point in the film, they end up getting to a big gathering where Jean and Jacques haven't seen each other at this point for maybe about a year, if not longer, and they bury the hatchet. This, in turn, is where Jacques finally meets Marguerite, Jean's wife, and he takes an immediate liking to her. And this is where things get very, very complicated. There's a point where Jean has to go off to Scotland and fight a war in Scotland. And then when returning, Jean finds out that there was one day where Marguerite was left completely alone in their estate. Jacques came by and forcibly took advantage of her without her consent, which she now wanted his help to put him on trial to answer for his crimes. So from Jean's point of view, one of his best friends betrayed him, took advantage of his wife, and essentially has been taking everything away from him ever since Jacques became friends with Pierre. You also have to remember here that Jean sees himself as a very noble man, very chivalrous, very good, will do the right thing, will stand up for his wife and his people. You move on to Jacques' story. This is where you start to find out how he truly felt for Marguerite. He was in love with her. He was smitten by her. And when he approached her the day she was home alone with nobody around, you could still say that Jacques took her without her consent, but there's something about the connection the two shared in his side of the truth. You could tell she liked him maybe even more than her own husband. So maybe she allowed this encounter to happen between the two of them. That is the truth from Jacques. Jacques believes that both of them were in love and that she wanted to do it just as much as he did. The truth, according to Marguerite, is where it gets really interesting, because from her eyes, her husband, Jean, was not a nice man. He was very self-centered. He was very selfish. He was very mean to her. He only used her when he needed her. He was very, very arrogant and just a man you would not want to be associated with. Then the whole relationship with Jacques simply was only one-sided. Jacques was in love with her. Jacques wanted her. She didn't. From her point of view, she was absolutely taken advantage of. So Eric Jaeger, once again the historian who wrote the original book, something he said that he wasn't quite fond of is every act begins with the truth according to blah, blah, blah. Something he picked up that I didn't realize when watching it. The truth according to Marguerite lingered 2 times as long as the truth according to Jean or Jacques, which essentially signifies that the movie, the director, the writing is specifically taking the side of Marguerite. That's not to essentially say it's a bad thing, because at the end of the day, her side does end up winning. The really interesting thing about this movie is at the end of the day, no one knows the truth. The only people who were in that room the day of the non-consent was Jacques and Marguerite. Now, we have to think here. Marguerite was a very beautiful woman. very good with words. She was very smart. She was trying to have a child with Sir Jean for so long, and it just was not working. One has to think that maybe she could have used this to her advantage, because imagine she got pregnant with Jacques' child while she was married to Sir Jean. That wasn't going to be a good look. That was not going to be a good thing. There is a very good chance she could have been using that card against Jacques to have the entire country look down upon Jacques instead of having the entire country look down upon her. And we all know what would have happened back in the 1300s, especially to women. They'd be beaten or hung or burnt. List goes on. She wants to avoid that. Speaking of all those tortures and cruel acts to women back in the day, there's even a chance that this is the complete opposite. You also do have to think that for her side, Marguerite is taking a massive risk because she knows, look at the lack of rights women had back then. Look at how mistreated women were back then. There's a chance that if she fails this case, if she's wrong and Jacques wins, they're going to do that to her regardless. So to put your life at stake like this just to prove a point, it's a pretty big deal for not just Marguerite, but women in general. So maybe she was telling the truth. Hard to tell. You also have to think too, Jean only has so much of the truth. He was away when this happened. There's no way of knowing if what happened to her is what happened to her. He only has so much of the truth. The only people who have the full out truth was Jacques and Marguerite. And because there were no other witnesses, we can never have the truth. It is simply the word of mouth of two people who are on polar opposite sides. Of course, the one is going to say he took advantage of me. Of course, the other one is going to say it was mutual. There's no way of truly knowing. This is why the truth is so tricky. It can be very one-sided, and it can be used to favor a particular party rather than the other. And at that point, is it really the truth? This is the thing, is it's a mystery. It is a case that truly might never be solved. It will never be solved. There's no way to know what actually happened other than the word of mouth of two people who simply will not agree with one another. Now, the end fight between Jean and Jacques was brutal and awesome. It was so good. I actually want to rewatch it just thinking about it right now. Like I said earlier about the fighting scenes in this movie, every bodily movement, every strike, every swing they took felt like life or death. And you could tell that both men were fighting for a cause. Jean, if you want to believe his truth, was truly fighting for his wife. His wife was disrespected, and he was fighting to put the record straight. From Marguerite's truth, Jean was fighting because it makes his image look bad. He could care less about her. He just wants his image to look good again. He wants his reputation to be at an all-time high the way it was before Pierre started to ruin his life. If you look at it from the truth of Jacques, Jacques is truly in love with Marguerite, and he is fighting not only for his life, but to prove that he did not take advantage of her without consent. Huge spoiler warning here, but at the end, Sir Jean does end up defeating Jacques by stabbing a dagger straight through his throat. But before he does, he gets a confession out of Jacques. But it wasn't so much of a confession of, did he do the R word? Once again, don't really know if I can say that on YouTube, so I'm just playing it safe. It was more so a confession of, yes, I did have sex with Marguerite. He stood by his word up until his dying moments where he full out says, I did not do anything wrong. I loved her and it was mutual. Kind of hard to argue with somebody who just before he gets stabbed in the face, full out says, no, I still didn't do it. Kill me all you want. Just a very interesting story. And I think it is so intriguing because we truly will never know the truth. Very, very surprised this movie is not getting any Oscar nominations. I think screenplay could get a nomination. I think directing could get a nomination. I think Best Actress could get a nomination for Jodie Comer. I think this movie could easily have been entered for 4 or 5 Oscar nominations, but unfortunately it didn't. So it's time to give my review, but before I do, we always look at IMDb, so let's see what it's got. For the user review ratings, it has a 7.4 out of 10, and for the Metascore ratings, it has a 67 out of 100. As for my rating, maybe some people will be surprised by this, but I gotta say, I really, really enjoyed it. It would be a film that I would rewatch again. I am giving this movie a 9 out of 10. I do have a medieval soft spot, Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and Game of Thrones, so I obviously was going to enjoy this. I like medieval movies that are based off of true stories, and I'm a sucker for film. I like good movies. I like good movies in the sense of how well did you film it? How was the choreography for fights, special effects? I love acting. I love character studies and all of that stuff. And this movie gave all of that to me, 9 out of 10. If you have not seen this movie, I highly suggest you watch it. And, it will give you a little bit of a history lesson and might teach you something new. But anyways, everyone, that is it for this movie review. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you want to see some of my other reviews for movies or shows or games, make sure you click on the link in the description below, or I will put a tag for it in the video here. But that is it for this video, everyone. And until next time, I will talk to you all very soon.